So what a wild week it's been so far. Let's do this a little bit differently. Is there any questions that anyone wants to get to immediately? Maybe they're a little confused about something, or they have some other questions or concerns. Let's try to start off there, and then if nothing presents itself, we'll just continue on with looking at the events that happened this week.
Just a quick one, if I may. I just want to know, is there a wiki out about installing Ronin Dojo on a Linux system, like just on a normal Linux laptop, the way I would any other node instead of on a Raspberry Pi? If there is, it would really help me. Thanks.
I don't think the Ronin Dojo package will work on like x86 systems yet. So it only works on AMD 64, I believe. There's wiki though for Ronin Dojo. I think it's wiki.ronindojo.io or something like that.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, I've got that one. I'll just throw it on the Raspberry Pi. It's cool. Thanks.
Yeah, well, we do have, of course, documentation for regular vanilla Dojo, putting that onto a normal, Linux system. But if you want specifically Ronin Dojo, I'm not 100% sure you could do that quite yet.
Sorry, just to repeat that, it's called what system? The one that can go on Linux?
Just normal Dojo that Samurai
Dojo.
Wallet produces. Yeah.
I think that's where I got it mixed up. Thanks so much. Okay, I'm ready for the rest of this stuff.
Okay, no problem. So yeah, I guess the big news this week is, well, it kind of all started initially actually with this kind of cryptic tweet from the Wasabi Wallet Twitter account, mentioning that ZK Snacks, which is the company behind Wasabi Wallet and that runs the coordinator, will start refusing certain UTXOs from registering to CoinJoins. This was obviously quite a shocking statement that I don't think many people were prepared for. And they didn't give much in the way of clarity throughout the thread, besides Nopara, who's the founder of Wasabi, posting an F. And if you don't know, the F signifies press F to pay respects, as in the thing is dead or dying, so you pay your respects by pressing F. It's an old meme. So there's really no clarification, and people were left to wonder, like, what the hell is going on? So this was March 13th. Yesterday, March 15th, an article came out in the Financial Times, and the general gist of the article is that crypto mixers, quote unquote, the term that they use, are being used to launder money, blah, blah, blah. We've all heard this before. The FCA is the UK's serious crime watchdog or regulator. And they say that, CoinJoin or mixing needs to be regulated in the same way that like exchanges are regulated. So that's all that was really said about it, at least in the FCA. So it wasn't that there's a new regulation coming. It wasn't that they're going to start cracking down on this. It was a desire for these services and the software to be regulated. So a lot of people are wondering, is this article what kind of pushed Wasabi over the edge to implement what amounts to censorship of UTXOs, blacklists? They haven't released any information as to which law they might be having to comply with, or which regulation they might be having to comply with. All that they've said is there's something that they have to comply with, but no clarity has been given. So if it is indeed the NCA's claim or desire for regulation to be implemented, it seems like they're jumping the gun. Now we can, we have some insight because we received a letter from the Financial Times on March 11th, where we got a heads up that, the National Crime Agency is warning about crypto mixers. You can see the email they sent us right on my screen here. And, there's 8 bullet points here of questions, I guess, or statements that the reporter is putting to us, and they asked for a response. If you haven't read the response, I urge you to. We sent what I think is a well-explained and good faith response to the reporter at the Financial Times. Of course, she only used one sentence from the response, and that's why we published it in full so people could read it themselves. But I'm not going to go through it verbatim over here. So you can see there's a lot of text there. But essentially, we respond to these 8 points, and we expect that Wasabi also received an email probably identical to this one that you're receiving, that you're reading right now on my screen. Our position is the same position that it's always been, is that we're not interested in building tools that enhance detriment to users. So we would never do anything like implementing blacklists. We would rather shut down entire operation than do something like that. What we're mostly confused about in the realm of the Wasabi situation is why did they choose to implement blacklists into their software when there doesn't appear to be any law or regulation that would require them to do so. The only thing you could argue is that one regulatory agency in the UK is making some noise saying they think that there should be regulation on this. So then the second big piece of information came out from the Wasabi team, from their Telegram group. And this is Nopara73, who's the founder of Wasabi Wallet, mentioning in his group that they're going to have to hire a blockchain analysis company and filter out CoinJoin input registrations with them. So it's not only blacklists, but it's also a front end for chain analysis, chain surveillance in the CoinJoin, at the front end of the CoinJoin. From when and exactly what kinds of inputs should be the victims of this censorship is unclear at this point. So, it sounds like they don't have regulatory clarity. If there was a regulatory issue that they needed to comply with, it would be clear. It would be very clear what they're supposed to do. So this, I've come to expect a lot of things from Wasabi. Even the blacklist didn't really surprise me. They've had a terms of service from the very beginning, and the term of service said that you're not allowed to use Wasabi if you're, doing any illegal activity or sex work or using buying fireworks or all sorts of crazy shit. So the fact that they finally decided to enforce their terms of service didn't surprise me, but this is really surprising. For a CoinJoin privacy wallet to partner with chain surveillance companies that have done nothing but damage Bitcoin privacy and Bitcoin's fungibility, to partner with them and put them as a front end to your CoinJoin implementation is shocking, actually. So that's all I have to say about that. We'll find out more information, maybe. It will come out. But before I open up the floor to questions, I've made it kind of clear that we don't see any regulatory environment where non-custodial software developers would have to implement this type of blacklist and 2 partnership with chain analysis or chain surveillance firms. Wasabi Wallet is based in the EU, which is, I don't know why they decided to do that when they created the company, but they did. And the predominant regulatory regime in the EU and in the UK is the anti-money laundering fifth directive, or Directive 5. So if we're just going to look at that for a second, because the AML Directive 5 has very, very specific language that it uses. And who falls into being regulated by this particular regulation is very clear. And the two points I want to bring out are virtual currency exchange platforms. So these are providers engaged in exchange services between virtual currencies and fiat currencies. And custodian wallet providers, providers of custodian wallets or crypto wallet services where they hold the user's private keys to hold, store, and transfer virtual currencies. These are the two main points to think about when you're thinking about whether Wasabi, the coordinator, or the wallet developers would fall into these two categories. Well, they clearly wouldn't fall into a virtual currency exchange platform because they don't deal with the exchange of BTC to fiat. And they don't, as far as we understand, provide custodial wallet. It'd be very surprising if they did. So they wouldn't fall into the custodian wallet providers portion of this regulation. But what do they have to do if they did fall into this? Well, they would have to, besides register their business with local authorities, which they've already done, they would be subject to AML requirements. They would be considered financial institutions. They would be required to implement KYC and due diligence and do suspicious activity reporting and hand over identifiable user information to what are called financial intelligence units. They're doing this. This is what they're talking about doing: suspicious activity reporting and customer due diligence. They're doing this without having a regulatory need to do so. And that can be verified by reviewing the fifth money laundering directive that the EU, that's enforced in the EU and various other countries outside the EU, like the UK. So our position is there is no regulation, whether it be EU or US or Canadian, that would require a non-custodial wallet developer or a non-custodial service provider to comply with any rule that states they need to do suspicious activity reporting, need to do blacklisting, needs to collect KYC information, needs to partner up with a chain surveillance firm. It doesn't exist. And I think it's very strange that they're being so vague about what's caused their decision to do this. I truly believe that they got spooked when the Financial Times sent them an article saying that the National Crime Agency wants a regulation. And the response has been shameful. So that's all I have on that situation, and I'd like to open the floor up to any questions.
I'm actually curious. I mean, maybe it's not as much of a question, but maybe it's not related to the actual, 5 AMLD in this case. Maybe they've been hit up by some law enforcement agency because of the Bitfinex coins, and maybe they've just, outside of this normal regulation, have been said, they've said, well, you need to partner with us or it's over for you otherwise. It could, I'm just speculating, right? But maybe it could be that it's kind of just an external requirement that's just being pushed onto them. Yeah,
I thought about that as well, Stefan. So, there's two kind of, so there's two jurisdictions right now that Wasabi and ZK Snacks have a tie with, right? So the corporate entity itself, ZK Snacks, is in Gibraltar, and I believe their offices and employees are in Hungary. So let's say they receive a request from law enforcement in the U.S. Well, they have no real obligation to comply with a U.S. Law enforcement request, right? Even a court order, they could just tell them to go buzz off, and then they decide they'll never go to the U.S. But even so it's unlikely that that's what it is. It could be a Hungarian police order or a court order. It could be a Gibraltar court order to supply information, right? That's what the court order would be about. It's like, hey, you have information. We know that this hacker went into Wasabi, so give over all your information about these inputs. I don't believe that's what happened, because if that was what happened, Wasabi would be able to have a feather in its cap and say, be very open with the community and say, look, the court came to us and said to give all their information, and this is exactly what we gave them. Nothing, because we can't. We have no information on the users, and that's how this was designed. That's the response I would have expected from a court order to comply. Now, then the argument, oh, maybe there's a gag order. Those gag orders aren't really used outside the U.S. very frequently. They're quite uncommon in the EU. So I don't believe that to be the case. So while it is feasible what you described, Stefan, I doubt that's what it's about. Because why wouldn't you be proud to tell your user base with a feather in your cap and say, yes, we got requested information, but we were not able to provide them anything useful.
Right, that would be similar to how, let's say, when Signal gets requested and they say, look, we don't have the info, so we don't have your message data, etc. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good answer. I wonder then, is it that they are... I think I'm just very confused, because looking at the public statements from the Wasabi wallet and the ZK Snacks team, it just seems very unusual that they're trying to have this weird in-between position of saying we are a privacy wallet, but we're actually going to start, blocking certain coins or doing certain analysis. And it just, I don't know. I'm just confused by the whole thing, and maybe there's more clarity that'll be coming out later, but it just seems extremely damaging to the overall reputation of the company and of the project.
It's totally confusing, and I think there must be confusion over at the Wasabi HQ, because this was what was posted just a mere couple, I think it was 4 hours before the declaration that you won't be able to coin join them all, actually. So keep calm and coin join them all, and then suddenly the coordinator refused certain UTXOs, and then someone asks, well, any information. I do mute this account, so please excuse that. Someone asks, are you teaming up with Chainalysis and reporting suspicious UTXOs? And this individual who works for Wasabi and stated unequivocally, no, we're not going to do that. But then suddenly the next day, Nopara in the Wasabi Wallet Telegram group says, yeah, we're going to have to hire an analysis company. So I don't think the left hand knows what the right hand's doing really over in Wasabi. And I think that it's in their interest right now to play silent and dumb. Because if the truth is that they've implemented this as a result of a Financial Times article, it's really embarrassing and it's really silly.
Agreed.
Anyone else? I saw there were some comments in text, so let me try to read that. So Crypto NT says, I think Samurai Wallet just hit the nail on the head. They've done exactly what Bull Bitcoin did in Canada and invited this in. Basically, yeah, that's preemptive self-regulation. Maybe it's as simple as the two CEOs who run Wasabi Wallet. They have two CEOs. I don't quite understand why. Are both EU Commission alumni. They both have long experience as lawyers and politicians or experts within the EU Commission. They obviously have no issue with regulation itself, and they may see a niche area where compliant coin joins are desired by a portion of the market. I think that's insane, an insane thought, but that might be where their head's at. It doesn't seem like the contributors to Wasabi are thrilled with this development. How could you be? So it could have been a decision from the top, but it's still there. That's the decision, and users, and we all have to deal with it now.
I suppose, given the previous public statements from the co-founders, it's not beyond the realms of possibility that this is actually a play to get a regulatory capture here. So given that they have been historically getting a degree of liquidity within the market for coin joins, and they've already got like a network effect there, I suppose it could be a potential play for them to kind of circle the wagons, make it expensive for any other coordinator to set up because of the obligation of paying for chain analysis if they make that a regulatory requirement, and doing that to kind of cement their position. I suppose that's a potential kind of way that the founders could have looked at it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a possibility. I don't know. Just dealing with Wasabi in the past, I don't know if they're that strategic. Maybe they are, and maybe it's a grand play, but that's a typical playbook thing to do. I don't see how compliant CoinJoin, if there's an alternative in the market in the form of Samurai Wallet and Join Market and various other things that are going to pop up, I'm sure, how they'll be able to compete effectively. But yes, what it does do is it gives regulators a hand ledge to grasp onto, right? So the next time for the sixth money laundering directive, they have an example of a compliant coin join, how it can work, a case study of how it can work and how it's receiving liquidity, and it solves the quote unquote solves the privacy problem that users face when using a transparent blockchain, but while remaining compliant with money laundering regulations. And if they go through with this and it's successful and people use it, it will definitely be seen as a case study for regulatory bodies, and will be recommended as the way to do things properly. So what should have happened right as soon as what we did when we got the email from the Financial Times is a very, very clear foot down saying no, non-custodial software is not subject to regulations. It never has been, and what you're proposing is way out of line. So that opposition has been from the main industry participants. Opposition has been registered, and it's on the record. Instead, you have compliance, immediate compliance, that sends the wrong messages. It's kind of a mirror of what happened with the AOPP, but much, much more serious. How about any other questions? Feel feel free to talk, guys. Unless you're auto muted, I don't think I auto muted anyone. So I think feel free to jump in and ask questions.
Samurai, I just wanted to say thanks a lot. I'm busy installing that My Dojo right now on my Linux computer. So
oh, cool. All right. Good luck. So one of the things I can talk about. So when they were debating the fifth money laundering directive, it hadn't gone into effect yet. They were still discussing it, and this is how regulatory bodies work. You don't usually get a surprise letter in the mail one day from a regulator saying, "Hey, here's a new regulation and you're in violation." There's comment period, there's proposals, especially in the EU. There's countless committees that are formed, and people talk about it, and comments are gathered. And that's how the fifth money laundering directive, started out. And one of the provisions was that. Let me jump back over here. So one of the provisions in the early draft was that custodian wallet providers, it was custodian and non-custodian. So it would have affected Samurai, and it would have affected all non-custodial wallets operating in the EU and the UK. So we keep a very, very close eye on the regulatory landscape of all the major countries. And we identified that as a serious threat, potential threat to the ongoing longevity of Samurai and what we can do. Even though it ended up not becoming part of the regulation, it was removed, the non-custodial wallet providers. We had already made a decision that we needed to move jurisdictions. Our development was occurring in the UK at that time. And as soon as we saw that, we began the process of delinking ourselves from the UK, making sure that no developers were there, no servers existed there, nothing to tie us to the UK, and we got the hell out. And that's what's known as a jurisdictional arbitrage. You don't have to necessarily leave the country itself. Your corporate entity gets relocated. In the case of Wasabi, for example, if there was an issue in Gibraltar or the EU, they theoretically could set up a company somewhere else and not operate out of that country anymore, and without breaking any laws whatsoever. So just like wealthy individuals, they move their country, move their citizenship for a better tax advantage. Companies and entities can do the same thing. So it's an example of one of the strategies that you can employ to get around these types of issues when regulations do change in your area. Of course, the other option is to not comply and to stop doing whatever it is that you're not allowed to be doing anymore. And I think that that's an honorable decision to make if you have no other options left. I don't believe that was the case in Wasabi's in this particular case. I think that there's plenty of options left. I don't even think there's a regulation that they're needing to follow. But if it did get to that point, if regulations change, if something changed, the honorable thing to do is to say, look, we're not gonna validate this. We're not gonna do something that's detrimental to Bitcoin users and Bitcoin privacy and Bitcoin fungibility. So we'd rather not do it.
Jumped on this a little bit late, but sorry, driving as well, listening to you guys. But question for you, as far as the actual mechanism of identifying, I guess, quote unquote, blacklisted UTXOs, do we know what that is yet? Because from what I've seen, it just seems like this vague. We're identifying blacklisted UTXOs and throwing those into a pool and saying no. Is that something that, like we know how they're doing that, or I mean, like, because if Samurai was like somehow compelled to do that, you guys, are you stopping because of ability, or are you stopping because you're saying hell no and choosing to stop?
So the first part of your question, well, one, everything about this whole thing is vague. You know, they haven't been exactly forthright or direct or clear with how they intend to blacklist. What we do know that came out earlier, late yesterday, is that they're going to hire a blockchain surveillance company. So either, you know, Chainalysis or what's the
Elliptic.
mine Elliptic. There's another one Petrov runs. I forgot the one that Petrov runs, but anyway, one of the surveillance firms they're going to outsource the surveillance firm to flag anything that would be a problem, so to speak. So it's exactly what the exchanges do and any of the custodial third-party applications or services do. As for whether we can't or physically can't, yes, we could physically put a blacklist and say no UTXOs of this are allowed to enter. It's just, you know, one, it's so trivial to get around. And two, once something's confirmed, it's confirmed, right? So if, you know, if that blacklist search doesn't trigger something and the UTXO gets confirmed, there's nothing we can do about it at that point. But any centralized coordinator has the ability to, you know, filter or do anything like that. So it would really be we're not going to do that. And we're either not going to do it by moving jurisdictions if there is a regulation that says we have to do it, or if that's not feasible, we won't offer the service. We won't do it anymore because it's not right. I don't know who asked that question, but thank you for the question, whoever you were.
I did, thanks.
Anyone else out there? We have quite a few people listening in now.
I have a question. I want to ask something that's been coming out from the Wasabi community.
Okay.
Some mentioned where they were talking about they're going to fork the project and they're going to be running anonymous coordinators. And to me, it doesn't seem like it's going to make sense, even though they were even suggesting that they will add on the Wasabi coordinator into Umbro and people can run their own coordinators. Can you explain that in detail, why that doesn't make sense?
Yeah, sure. So before we jump on to people running their own coordinators on their Umbro, let's take a step back to the I think they're calling it Wasabi BTC or something like that. So this is a group of NIMs, I suppose, who have decided that they're going to fork the Wasabi coordinator, which is open source, so they can do that. And they're going to offer coordination without these blacklists. I believe that's an accurate representation of what these people plan on doing. And it's a good thing that the response is for that to happen. That's something you want to see, right? There are challenges ahead if they intend to do that. The biggest challenge that they're going to have is drawing liquidity to their coordinator, right? So it's quite difficult to bootstrap a coordinator. You need to get people on board, and the more people you have on board using your coordinator, the more resilient and the larger the base anonymity set is. So the challenge for them is going to be to attract liquidity. The secondary challenge for them is going to be to, obviously fix the bugs and the issues that are present in the Wasabi coordinator. And my biggest hope is that this team is legitimate and that they're serious and they want to continue to offer coordination without blacklists, but they also are realistic and understand that Wasabi has serious fundamental issues in the mixing that happens on the blockchain, the transactions that are occurring on the blockchain. So hopefully that they'll take that seriously and make fixes that to date the Wasabi development team has refused to make. Now, the second part of your question is, I saw that as well. I believe it was the Wasabi community manager who suggested that maybe, you could run a coordinator on your Umbrel. That makes really no sense. A coordinator needs to be, like I just said, needs to have a diverse liquidity set. If you're the only person running the coordinator and you're the only person in the coordinator, that means you're the only person to mix with. So it really makes zero sense at all. And you don't want, 15, 20 coordinators, because then all you're doing is breaking up the liquidity that could be in aggregate used for a greater anonymity set. And especially with Wasabi's systemic flaws, less liquidity makes the flaws really, really easy to notice and very, very apparent. So they have a uphill journey ahead of them, this team, but I do wish them success and I wish them luck in offering coordination services that do not engage in UTXO censorship like the default coordinator is going to do.
Hi, Samurai Wallet. Could you expand on some of the details in the Financial Times article, in particular around sort of the numbers they're using, or I guess ill-informed numbers perhaps they're using as basis of the article? In particular, they've said, around 15% of all proceeds of crime was routed through mixes in 2021, according to Elliptic. And then it goes on to say in the following sentence, well-known services include Wasabi Wallet, Samurai Wallet, and Helix. And then, so they're not only sort of using numbers that are perhaps inflated already, that 15% number, but then also merging sort of non-custodial and custodial, CoinJoin and mixes together, if you like. Could you expand on that?
Yeah, that's a really good point, Rabbit. So let me start with the Helix connection there, because it's actually, that's kind of funny that this was added in, and it really kind of shows what this is about. So Helix, if you're unaware, was a custodial Bitcoin mixer, meaning you sent your Bitcoin to this entity, the operator of Helix, and you hoped that he would send you back unconnected Bitcoin. So it was a trust-laden operation, right? And he advertised the site on message boards and hidden services and wherever else, and explicitly advertised as a way to launder money. The exact term was used. The reason I find it funny is because, not funny for this individual, but funny or ironic that it was in the article, is because the Helix operator was arrested and he was put into prison and charged with money laundering. So that was a successful operation where, it wasn't the National Crime Agency, I don't believe. They may have been a partner, but I believe it was U.S. forces, where they took down a quote-unquote money launderer using existing laws and existing regulations against the money transmission. And that's really what it comes down to, is transmission of money, transmission of funds. If you're taking custody of anyone's private keys or anyone's funds, you become a custodian, you become a transmitter. And that is a regulated activity in most countries in the world. So the fact that they commingled Helix, which is a custodial mixing service, with Wasabi and Samurai, which are non-custodial, displays exactly what the goal, of the NCA is, which is more people are moving on to non-custodial solutions. We don't have the legislative or regulatory ammo to do anything about it, and we want to change that. We want the power now. So they're priming the barrel, and the reaction of Wasabi, if this is indeed the reaction to this, is playing right into the hands of this regulator or this agency. It's playing right into their hands because they admit, right? They admit they have nothing. They can't do anything about it. Using existing law and regulation. So if they wanted to do something about it, they would have to propose new law or new regulation. Right? And the funny thing is, in order really to quote unquote effectively stop that in a non-custodial CoinJoin scenario, is you would have to make it an illegal act. You would have to make the person doing it subject to a crime, because they're the ones that are doing it. It's not Samurai and it's not Wasabi. It's them. It's a funny thing, and the fact that it was put in there. So the other part of the question was about Elliptic, and really what is being used by the NCA as the gotcha, the big gotcha. We have to do it because of this. Is a 15% figure, I believe is what it is, of illicit transactions into mixers. Yeah, 15% of all proceeds of crime was routed through mixers in 2021, according to Elliptic, a group that analyzes cryptocurrency transactions. Right. So let's not forget, of course, Elliptic is a for-profit company that relies on government contracts. Right. So what they essentially did was put together a brochure for the National Crime Agency to say, hey, this is why you need to hire us, because look at all of this crime that's happening. And they don't provide the underlying data, and they don't provide anything other than a headline figure of 15%. Right. Well, the funny thing is that FinCEN in the United States, which is not a for-profit company, it's a regulator or guidance agency, did their own analysis in 2020, and you found that the largest flows of illicit funds in the Bitcoin come from ransomware, which account for 1%. So the 1% and 15% numbers are so drastically different that, one of them is obviously wrong. Which one is it? So we don't look at anything that Elliptic or Chainalysis or any of those guys put out as anything other than brochures and commercials for themselves, because they don't provide any data to back it up. But that is what's being used, as the justification. And these are the people, exactly these people, who Wasabi are going to partner with to enforce the blacklisting. And that's what's so messed up.
Hello, friends. Do you hear me? Can I ask a quick question?
Please do.
So, I'm DK, by the way. I have orange pilled quite a few people through the last 5 years, and I've always told everyone that Bitcoin is decentralized, has no jurisdiction, censorship resistant, and I've also told them it can be private, convinced a lot of people to use Samurai and White Matters. And yesterday when the news broke out, a few people messaged me at the same time. It was quite funny because I learned from friends that this is happening with Wasabi, and everyone asked me, why does Wasabi, and why do we care at all if Bitcoin has no jurisdiction. We're not saying, and that sounds a bit childish, but I'm just forwarding the question because I couldn't answer it myself. If it doesn't matter if Bitcoin is censorship resistant, why do we care? Why Wasabi can't just say, suck my sats, like just make a joke of it and be above all of this? Why do they have to comply with anything if they have privacy? Why can't everything just be run over Tor, have a forum there, have a website, hide their identities, and all that stuff?
Well, yeah, I mean, when Wasabi was created, they made a decision to, associate their identities with the project. They made a decision to register the project in the EU, an EU jurisdiction. They made a decision to build out, offices and hire a lot of people on payroll and salary. And when you make these decisions, your maneuverability reduces significantly. So yes, while Bitcoin itself is at the protocol level, quote unquote, censorship resistant, if you've made yourself a big target and put all these hooks into the fiat system or the real world system, then you're going to have to to react and do things, right? So again, there's no justification for what they've done in terms of how they've reacted. But as a company and as a regulated, or not a, but as a registered company, they would have to do something if a regulation came down the line to say, you can't do what you're doing. And that's why I said a little earlier that, jurisdiction hopping, regulatory arbitrage is a viable option for entities like Wasabi to engage in. Even us who Samurai, which is very non-traditional, we're not in any one jurisdiction. Any servers that we have are in a very privacy preserving and privacy friendly country. There are no real employees. Everyone is a contributor doing it out of passion. There's no office. There's nothing like that. So our maneuverability is greater. When we need to move jurisdictions, for instance, it's a lot easier and cheaper for us to do that. So in a sense, I understand what you're saying. And, I think that to a degree, you're right. The response from Wasabi shouldn't have been, blacklist and compliance. It should have been, here's why you're wrong, and we're willing to fight you on this and put money in the form of lawyers and legal challenges and whatever we have to do, because that's why we set up a company, right? So, we're run by two lawyers. Like, why wasn't there a challenge? Why wasn't there anything like this? But yeah, Bitcoin is censorship resistant, but if the platforms and services on top aren't, then really what do you have? And we've all now accepted that third parties and KYC and AML and regulated entities, you don't get censorship resistance from them, right? They're not going to help you out in that respect. But it's been assumed that non-custodial software, you did still have that censorship resistance, because that's the whole point of Bitcoin. But and that's why I think everyone is there's such a big noise about this, is because that trust or that belief has been shattered with a non-custodial wallet going down this route.
Thank you for your answer. And it hurts. It upsets me, because normie friends that have been trying so hard to orange pill with ideas of freedom are showing me articles that one of the only two big players in the private Bitcoin space, like the companies advertising privacy and fighting for it, they don't have employees that they can just pay in clean Bitcoin and be without the jurisdiction, follow the ideals of this whole Bitcoin movement, that we can make a new alternative world in the internet and have freedom there.
Yeah, I
What
absolutely
made them
agree.
it's so shocking that a privacy company chose to go that route, and all the normies are seeing that they've heard vaguely about this Bitcoin thing, and now they hear the government cracking down on something, and then the companies comply. It just ruins the whole reputation. It feels to me like I've wasted my words with these people for so long.
Yeah, trust me, I definitely understand what you're saying. It's not even just those who have, recommended Wasabi. It's all of us in the privacy space. It's a shocking thing to see, and I think, as we kind of mentioned earlier on the talk, that it makes it harder for the rest of us, because it can be used as a case study of how compliance can be implemented in the non-custodial sector of Bitcoin, and it seeds ground needlessly. It shifts the playing field, the battlefield, to their decision, their choice, right? Like, when you're organizing a battle, you want to be the one that sets the terrain. You don't want the opponent to set the terrain. And that's exactly what they've done, is allow the opponent to set the terrain. I would have liked to see if there is indeed, and I don't believe there is, but if there is indeed a legal challenge or a regulatory challenge, I would have liked to see a robust defense against it. And that, that includes firing up the lawyers, and filing, and making court filings and making objections and doing all that stuff that lawyers do. But you're a successful CoinJoin coordinator. You should be willing to invest some of your profits into a robust legal defense for your industry that you benefit from. And it's certainly what we would do. We don't have as big of a budget as Wasabi does. We don't have as many investors, and we don't have all the same resources at our disposal. But what we do have is a spirit to fight, and a legal team that we keep on retainer to look into these regulatory changes, for example, for one, but also to be ready to respond immediately to any encroachment. It's such a weird kind of shift in thinking that just because you get a request from a government, that means you have to comply immediately. Like, that's not how it works. It's called a request, right? They want you to comply, or it's a court order. There's two different things, right? And in both of those, one is a request and one's an order. And in both of those situations, that's what lawyers are for, because they respond to those things and they know how to respond to it in a way that doesn't expose you, but keeps your goals in mind, right? And I would have liked to see a robust defense. And I think the reason why we didn't see that is because there is no regulation that's forcing them to do this. I don't believe it. I haven't seen it. No one has been able to tell me what regulation it is. All that we've heard is that there's some regulation out there that Wasabi has been non-compliant with up until this point, and suddenly has to become compliant with. And until someone shows me what that regulation is, this response is due to a Financial Times article by a reporter based on the desires of an agency in the United Kingdom. Like, it's just too crazy to think about.
There's just something. Yeah.
Sorry, I was just gonna say this might be a good opportunity on your guys' end to really instill some hope in this community, because it's like I totally hear what this guy's saying, right? It's like you put so much time and effort into it, and now it's like a big player like a Wasabi decides to do this. I think that there's a lot of people that are, you're feeling the ripples in the Bitcoin community saying, well, man, is there even any point anymore to be able to do some of this stuff? And then normies see it and go, well, see, it's just the same as fiat.
Yeah.
So I guess a question for you is, from buying Bitcoin or obtaining Bitcoin to end product, mixed, spendable, clean Bitcoin, what's a good way that's still viable to have clean coin? Could you explain that? Like you plug your own product, and everything like that. I'd love to hear, how you guys would recommend just being, clean UTXOs Bitcoin.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the only thing we would recommend is Whirlpool. Like, that's the whole point of it. Just to be clear, when you say clean UTXOs, I know you're speaking in a colloquial fashion, but you bought those UTXOs on an exchange, so the exchange has your KYC information. Just because you enter any CoinJoin doesn't mean that the exchange will no longer have that information. They'll still know that you obtained these UTXOs, and at a certain point you put them into a CoinJoin, right? That's where the trail will end for them. But they still have a record of that, purchase and where they went before the CoinJoin. Now, the point of the CoinJoin is to disassociate future activity of those coins with their past, so that exchange or anyone else looking can't, with 100% probability or reliability, know that, hey, these are the same coins. The only CoinJoin implementation to break 100% deterministic links is our implementation of CoinJoin called Whirlpool. So whether that be you use Samurai to do that, or whether you use Sparrow Wallet to do that, both are using an implementation of Whirlpool, and both are using a single coordinator. So you're getting a large, diverse liquidity pool. So yeah, my recommendation would be to set up a Samurai wallet, set up a Sparrow wallet, whichever one you prefer. Receive your coins into that wallet. And when you have a large enough balance of at least 0.001 Bitcoin, to enter into a Whirlpool mix. And from there, you have a huge amount of tools available to you for when it becomes time to spend those mixed coins. We have post-mix tools, both, again, Samurai and Sparrow now has post-mix tools, such as Stonewall X2 and Stowaway. Sparrow has the ability to mix those UTXOs direct to your cold storage. So, depending on how you want to interact with your mixed coins afterwards, there's various options for you within the Samurai ecosystem and the Whirlpool, the Sparrow wallet ecosystem as well. And if you're coming from Wasabi, then Sparrow is a natural choice because it's a desktop wallet, so the migration would be very easy. You put the same words in, you can connect it up to your own node, and the process is pretty smooth sailing for a Wasabi user to come over. Again, I don't know why Telegram isn't telling me which people are speaking. So whoever just asked that, thank you. And I agree that it's an image problem broadly for CoinJoin and for Bitcoin privacy when these type of events happen. Normies will get the tabloid or the bite size headline, see, big privacy wallet adds, UTXO censorship. And then they go, yeah, what's the difference between this and fiat? And in some ways they're absolutely right. They should be saying that. It's an embarrassment that this thing is kind of morphing and turning into a glorified PayPal. No one here wants that. And these types of events and these types of decisions that these people are making move at least the perception to that way. And I would argue in some cases it's reality. Custodial services are rampant. KYC AML is rampant. Now we're seeing non-custodial wallets start to implement regulatory suggestions, like first the AOPP, and then now the Wasabi implementing blacklist based possibly on an article.
Exactly. In this world of surveillance that we live in, Bitcoin's been our only hope of freedom and strength. And there's something about the word compliance in the context of Bitcoin that feels like fear. It feels like weakness. And
it's fear. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, remember when Elon Musk, and I don't like the guy at all, but remember when he had some issues with the SEC and he tweeted that the E in SEC stands for Elons and people went crazy. This is the type of attitude that are expected from Wasabi, and I think they owe it to their community to support their hope and belief of freedom.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, it's been no surprise that we've had our issues with Wasabi over the years. It's always focused on the fact that their mixing protocol was weak and flawed, and we did our best to demonstrate those flaws in a reproducible and verifiable fashion. But this is a whole other, other issue. This is incredibly surprising that they would make a move like this. And, as Stefan said earlier, what we need to await, actual details from Wasabi. I can't for the life of me understand why they chose to announce this in the way that they did. So we'll await those details. But as I've hopefully demonstrated when we were looking at the fifth money laundering directive, which is what they would be regulated under if any of the regulations, there's nothing there. There's absolutely zero there that would require them to do anything like this. And there's no law ever anywhere that says you can't discuss what regulations that you comply with. That's absurd. So I think that the regulation needs to be disclosed to their users and to the wider community. And so we and everyone involved can start to look at that regulation and figure out how do we fight it, whether it be undermining the regulation through technical means, so making changes to services, architecture changes that would render the regulation as not applicable to the application anymore, or more traditional means, like I said, as legal fights. But until someone shows us the damn regulation, it's all just it's all fluff. You complied, without any requirement or need to. And one of the things that we've said in our community for a long time is asking permission is seeking denial, and that's exactly what they've done. They're starting to ask permission, and it's absurd.
They just dropped out of the privacy conversation, and this is sad. Even though their product is lesser, I think that it's always been very helpful for all the Bitcoiners, for the whole community, that there are two players in the privacy space, and all the drama between Samurai and Wasabi, all the memes, all the arguments on Twitter, it drew more attention to privacy, involved more people, helped them in depth understand the nuances of the privacy. I myself was a Wasabi customer at the beginning. I was a tester of the first Hodl wallet or something, and after that, I learned about Samurai, and the reason why I learned the true privacy, the differences, and it was comparing the two projects. And now, if we don't have two projects in the space anymore, I see this as a damage to the overall idea of privacy.
Yeah, well, I mean, absolutely. I mean, there's still obviously Join Market, and that's an active project, and it's actively developed. In terms of mix quality, it's not as good as a Whirlpool, but it's absolutely better than Wasabi. So, there's still that. And I think that, at least speaking just for Samurai, we, I won't say that the competition between Samurai and Wasabi has made us better, because the competition against, in terms of when you're looking at the mixes, there is none. The mixes are terrible on Wasabi. We could have done 50% as good a job as we did with Whirlpool in terms of mixed composition, and it would have been a vastly better thing than Wasabi. So for us, I would actually say we would like to see a competent competitor, because then, you know, there could actually be more pressure to outcompete, and when there's that type of pressure there, the consumer usually is the winner. They get the best products possible. So yeah, I would like to see a competent competitor if there's going to be one, and maybe this team that forked Wasabi will become that competent competitor. I doubt it, but I wish them luck and hope that they do become that. You know, but ultimately, fact of the matter is Bitcoin privacy. There are tools that let you achieve high levels of Bitcoin privacy today. We brought these tools to market. Other wallets have implemented these tools. So the situation for Bitcoin users of trying to attain Bitcoin privacy is vastly better than it was just a few years ago. So things have improved tremendously. So, you know, I'm definitely bullish still for our own stuff, particularly. This is a setback, but it's a social setback. It's yet again Wasabi tainting the name of Bitcoin privacy. Yet again doing you know, substandard operations. At this time, it's not on Blue blockchain. It's on at a social level. Well, is there any other questions from anyone? We've gone about, I think, an hour, a little over an hour. So if there's no other questions, we'll wrap this up. Just jump in if there is. I'm going to check the chat to see if there's anything text-wise come in. I want to see somebody get a Wasabi blacklisted UTXO, send it through Whirlpool, and send it through Wasabi. Chef's kiss. Yeah, Jocko, that's funny. It's actually funny. When I think it was in the beta phase still of Wasabi Wallet when they first launched, someone had sent Bitcoin to the Wasabi Wallet from their Samurai wallet, and by default, Samurai will send the transaction as a Stonewall. And what a Stonewall is a fake CoinJoin, or a Stonewall X2 is a real CoinJoin, but it's miniature in size. And they sent the coin to their Wasabi wallet, and the Wasabi wallet registered it as a mixed output with a high privacy score, and they weren't able to mix it. And they asked, you know, Noparo, you know, why? And he said, and he actually said, you know, I guess the Stonewall algorithm fooled the Wasabi wallet. So I suspect that whatever blacklist that they actually end up implementing, you could get around it pretty easily, either by whirlpooling, setting a post-mix UTXO, but probably even just Ricochet would work. Ricochet works great for like exchanges like Coinbase and, you know, all the centralized exchanges, getting around those stupid blacklists. So I can't imagine why Ricochet wouldn't work perfectly for getting around the Wasabi blacklist. But why would you? Like, why would you at that point enter in? Let's see. Anything else here? Crypto NT says, I think they damage their reputation beyond repair. But you guys see any future benefit to steganographic joins for general purpose spends? Yeah, absolutely. Stowaway is a steganographic coin join. So that's the first one that we put in, and it's really cool. I think the concept is very cool, and the more implementations of those types of transactions increases the efficiency or the effectiveness of those types of transactions, because those types of transactions are all about undermining heuristics, because you can't reliably believe what you see on the blockchain when it comes to these transactions in terms of what you would normally expect. And therefore, all transactions that look like these have to be looked at suspiciously or with, they have a higher chance of being steganographic. So, you want kind of like a mass usage there. So we think that there's promise there, but not as any kind of replacement for a proper zero-link coin join.
Samurai, I have a quick question.
Okay.
Paynums, how difficult are they to implement into existing wallets? And the reason I'm asking is because, as you stated, Sparrow has implemented it. You guys have always had Paynums, but I see it as I don't see other wallets even speaking about how they're trying to do it, or when they think they'd start implementing privacy features such as this. Is it a very difficult thing to implement, or is it just that they're not looking at it as something that takes precedence right now?
I think it's more of the latter. I think that it's not something that takes precedence for them. I don't think it's necessarily difficult to implement. The problem had been primarily that there wasn't really any library support for a long time, right? So it was a little bit more difficult to implement because unless you were implementing it in Java, which is how we implemented it in our Android app, of course, you would have to write quite a bit of code from scratch. You would have to do a lot of kind of crypto point math and stuff like that, curve math. But these days, there's a JavaScript library. I believe there's a Rust library. There's obviously the Java implementation, the Java library. So implementing it into an existing wallet, I wouldn't say is hard these days. It's relatively straightforward. I think a lot of people or developers still defer too much to gatekeepers. And when BIP47, Paynims, as we call it, when they were introduced, the core developers of the time did not like the proposal. They thought that it was spammy. They had other misunderstandings, frankly, about it. And they recommended that wallet developers don't implement it. But again, a recommendation is just that, a recommendation. We looked at the proposal, we looked at the spec, and we saw the huge privacy potential in such a tool and implemented it. And hopefully, well, you can see with Sparrow that they have been the second wallet to implement it. And I think that's really one of the strong suits of Craig over at Sparrow is he looks at the facts objectively. He looks at the problem statement and then the solution. And if things line up and things make sense, he'll implement it. He doesn't ask permission and he doesn't seek approval. And I think that's really what it is. That's what it takes. If you're building your Bitcoin wallet and you have a big product team and a product guy and they're doing all these, fucking product things and surveys and talking to these people, and they don't have a real understanding of what it is people need. And if privacy is not at their forefront, they'll never think of the things. They'll never think of it. So that's why I don't think it's taken off in the mainstream wallets. But I think we're gonna see a lot more wallets soon implementing BIP47.
Yeah, because I for one have seen when everything was going down in Canada with that I can't remember the platform's name, but Tallycoin came out and they had implemented Paynims for a way to receive your donation. So instead of just only being a non-custodial way of getting to it, you could do Paynims directly and have people that Paynims donate to your Paynim through your Tallycoin page. So that's why I thought if they can do it, is it still such a difficult thing to implement, or is it just that? So thanks again for the answer.
Yeah, specifically on Tallycoin, for them, implementation was incredibly easy. All they have to do is allow users to provide a payment code, and they display it onto their screen, and they can get the bot image and the name or whatever. They can get that from the payment code paynim.is website, but none of that's required. All they need is that string of text. So for services to implement in that way is very, very easy. it's a little, like I said, a little bit more difficult if you're a wallet developer implementing to your wallet. But these days it's relatively easy because so many libraries now exist for Bit47.
Yeah, understood.
All right, there's been a lot of chatter in the chat. I'm just going through it real quick, and then we'll wrap this up.
One user asked if you could talk about the Samurai Wallet roadmap.
Samurai Wallet roadmap. Well, we've been working on some stuff. I've teased it a couple times in various podcasts. We've been working on something real hard for the last a little more than a year. We're hoping to have something to announce Guns in Bitcoin in April. So stay tuned for that. Other than that, we're always looking at increasing the or improving anything that we can in the wallet in terms of enhancing privacy for users. So one thing that we've been looking at is multi-party TX0s, which, so if you don't know about Whirlpool, when you enter Whirlpool, you make a transaction called a TX0. That's like the entrance transaction before mixing starts. So right now it's safe to assume that that all the inputs in a TX0 belong to one entity that is entering Whirlpool. With a multi-party TX0, you wouldn't be able to assume that anymore because one TX0 could contain inputs from many different people entering into Whirlpool. That's one of the ones I'm most excited about. And we want to bring the Mix to XPub feature that's currently only in our command line tool and also available on Sparrow. We want to bring that into the mobile wallet itself as well. So users will be able to mix to their cold storage after a certain number or threshold is met. Various improvements like that, I think, are on the short-term roadmap, but the long-term roadmap is still a secret for the time being, guys.
Seems really promising. I will be a fan of the cold storage part and the multi-party TX0 for sure. I mean, makes a lot of sense. I just have one quick question regarding regarding the number of pools that you offer. Maybe it would make sense now to increase the number from 0.05 to 0.5. Yeah, I feel there is really a high gap between one amount and the other, and maybe with Samurai disappearing or at least being useless, there is a lot of people looking for alternatives, and there would be an opportunity for you to increase that pool there.
So I think what you're saying is a pool denomination that's less than
exactly.
less than 0.5, but more than 0.05. Is that right?
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's an argument to it. The issue is we have to be cautious about adding new pools because it's very difficult to remove a pool. I don't even know if it's possible. I mean, it's theoretically possible, but what does that mean for remixing and all that sort of stuff? So we need to be very, very conservative and careful about creating pools because we don't want to take away liquidity from one pool just to have it move over to the other pool, and then the remixers and whatnot suffer in the other, the lower pool that lost its liquidity. So we want to make sure there's a true demand there, and that new liquidity is coming in to hit that demand. So what I will say is that we study the liquidity and the pool activity very closely, and we are looking at the kind of average TX0 deposit size that comes in, the average pool choice, and hopefully we'll be able to make informed decisions about the liquidity pools. One of the good things about Whirlpool is that it's really easy technically to create a pool. We can create a pool in 5 minutes. We just need to make absolute sure that it's not going to cannibalize another pool and that it's going to get used. So we're cautious on it, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, probably the 0.5 pool would suffer for sure. Yeah.
Right, and the 0.5 pool already is slower than we would like. You know, it's not like the 0.05 pool. It's not like the 0.01 pool, right? So any new pool, what we would want to see is the 0.5 pool kind of averaging at a remixable liquidity of 100 UTXOs registered at any given time. Like right now, the 0.01 and the 0.1 have like 300. The 0.05 has something like 200, and the 0.5 has something like 50 or 60 at any given time. So we'd like to see those numbers raise first.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, all right, guys. I think that was a good chat. Thank you for coming and hanging with us. I'm going to, I've recorded this. I'm going to be putting it on YouTube. If any of you that spoke have an issue with being put on YouTube, just send me a direct message and I'll try to edit you out. All right. Thanks for joining up. And if there's anything else, speak now or forever hold your peace. All right. Take it easy. Have a good one.